Hitler himself, the Nazi regime, until at least June 1941, considered the solution to the Jewish problem a Jewish homeland in Europe. The situation right now is that Israel is exhausted, but not depleted. Hezbollah is exhausted and depleted. Israel is the seventh state, number 7. The 7th time the Jews have tried to establish themselves on that plot of land.
The Abraham Accords get very close to a stabilization.
No. Abraham Accords was with tangential, fringe. It's not like Israel can say, okay, we got rid of our enemies. If Hezbollah withdraws beyond the Litani River, even the European Union is anti-Israeli. Ireland, for example.
Approaching an end game. What's your perspective?
Wars end in one or two situations. The parties are exhausted and depleted. They don't have resources to draw on. So the war ends. And that's been the case, for example, in 1918 with Germany. Or wars end when goals have been accomplished. They set out goals, and that's been the case in May 1945 with Nazi Germany. In Israel, the situation, or more precisely in the region, that's Israel, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, Gaza, West Bank, Jordan, the situation right now is that Israel is exhausted, but not depleted. Hezbollah is exhausted and depleted. Hamas is non-existent and depleted. It's no longer, it's in disarray. It's no longer a fighting force. It's like, sporadic guerrilla warfare here, there, pockets here, there. Tries to reorganize itself, but fails because Israel keeps attacking. So we have 3 parties who are exhausted and 2 parties who are also depleted. That's bad news. It means the war will erupt again soon. Only when Israel considers itself depleted as well as exhausted, the war will end. There is a 4th player, that's Iran, and Iran considers itself neither exhausted nor depleted, especially with the support of China and support of Russia. So I think this is a respite. It's a breather. I think it's not going to last long. And I think we're going to see a re-eruption of the war. It's definitely in Lebanon, but I think this time directly between Israel and Iran as well. A real war, a big one this time. At the end of which Israel will also be depleted, Iran will be devastated. And so then I think the war will end. The war hasn't ended because most of the major players are still intact, basically. That's Hezbollah, Iran, Israel. They're still intact. When you decimate the leadership, it's meaningless. The leadership of Hamas and the leadership of Hezbollah has been killed 10 times over, has been assassinated 10 times over. Nothing happened. It's nonsense. So I think there's a lot of fighting will and fighting power left among the contestants, and it's far from any meaningful resolution. It's not like Israel can say, okay, we got rid of our enemies. If Hezbollah withdraws beyond the Litani River in accordance with UN resolutions, it's also meaningless because they have missiles that reach way beyond this range, including precision missiles. And they can move their soldiers back to the border in a matter of hours, like 2-3 hours. It's a tiny country. And all the soldiers of Hezbollah, all literally, come from South Lebanon. They're civilians. They're civilians who double as militants. Exactly like Israel, by the way. Israel's army is civilians who double as fighters. There's a tiny core of standing army, and the vast majority of the soldiers are civilians. So these are nations fighting each other. These are not armies. These are civilians fighting each other. That's what the world refuses to or cannot understand. The Israeli army is a civilian army of civilians. The Hezbollah is army of civilians, and Hamas is army of civilians. These are civilians populations assassinating and mutilating and decimating each other. One of them has an air force, and that's the only difference. And so when civilian populations clash, civil wars, in effect, when civilian populations clash, these wars last many, many, many years. 30 years in Europe, 100 years in Europe, and minimum 5 years, like in the civil war in the United States, 4 years and 5 years in Europe, 6 years. So when civilians get involved, it's a much longer business. I foresee another round of war between Israel and Hezbollah, and a new war between Israel and Iran, this time like ongoing war, not like exchanges of missiles. Hamas will reconstitute, there's no question about it, because it's the civilian population, that's the issue. You can't kill all the civilian population. So it's a question of time until Hamas reconstitutes. And if Israel is busy in the northern front with powerful enemies, with Iran, Hezbollah, and so on, Hamas has every incentive to try again. Because what do they have to lose? Gaza Strip is no longer, it's finished. Infrastructure, buildings, population, everything is. So they have nothing to lose. Never bring your enemy to a situation where they have nothing to lose. Never. And Native Americans used to say that if you surround your enemy 3 ways. Leave the 4th corner open for retreat. The Israelis left Hamas no option. So they've got nothing to lose. It's a suicide mission either way. If they stay put, they will die. If they fight back, they will die. So they have every incentive to try again. And if Israel engages, for example, next 6 months, next year, in warfare with Hezbollah and Iran, Israel will be a much weaker player, much more enfeebled. Its economy is beginning to crumble. Its military is tired and exhausted. These are all civilians. Its civilian population is under constant threat and barrages of rockets, 250 a few days ago. There's a limit. Israel is even more tiny than, it's a postage stamp, So Hamas may be even more successful next time around than on October 7th. The borders of Israel cannot be defended forever. There is a fundamental incompatibility between the national goals of the nations or the civilians or whatever, the groups there. The Palestinians want their land back, and that means the abolition of the state of Israel, and a demand for most Israelis to re-immigrate, to go back to where they came from. Even those born in Israel, they were born to immigrants. So it's exactly like Donald Trump's deportation of millions of immigrants. That's what the Palestinians want to do. They want to deport about 85% of the population of Israel. They want to take over the lands which used to be theirs. And that's the end of the state of Israel. The state of Israel, on the other hand, refuses to go extinct for some reason. Either the Arabs, the Palestinians, will get rid of the Israelis, or the Israelis will get rid of the Palestinians. There is no middle ground. There's no solution. It's all pipe dreams and nonsense. The two-state solution is not implementable. Just look at the map. The one-state solution is another way to render Israel extinct. So there is no solution. The only solution is to get one of the parties should get rid of the other, because they're competing for the same piece of land. It's that simple. It's the same resource. Now, we have many precedents in the past. For example, India and Pakistan. For example, Greece and Bulgaria. For example, Czech Republic and Germany, where millions of people have been expelled, simply expelled. And the situation has been stable ever since. between India and Pakistan, more or less. Definitely between Greece and Bulgaria. Definitely between Greece and Turkey. Definitely between Czech Republic and Germany. The situation is stable. No one is saying we should reclaim the Czech Republic because 3 million Germans used to live in the Sudeten, you know? No one is saying, we should invade Greece because 3 million Bulgarians used to live in Greece. No one is saying half of India or one third of India used to be Muslim, so we should invade India and take over, or vice versa. We should eradicate Pakistan because it used to be India. No one is saying this anymore. People accepted the exchanges of population or the expulsion of population, or in extreme cases, the murder of population. But any other solution that is proposed is counterfactual, nonsensical, and a prime example of confusing reality with fantasy. Prime example. So sooner or later, the Palestinians will have to go, or the Israelis will have to go, because Israel is an air force, the support of the United States, and a lot of anger and fear, existential fear. Israel cannot exist. It's in the wrong neighborhood. It was the wrong choice. Israel cannot exist there. It's misplaced. So in the next 50 years, Israel may push away Palestinians again, and Nakba 2.0, push away the Palestinians and thrive for 50 years, pretending that it's an extension of Silicon Valley or whatever. But within 100 years, I wouldn't put my money on Israel, because there are too many Arabs and too many Palestinians and too much bad blood and too many new allies. Russia is a new ally. China is a totally new ally. What the hell is China doing in this region? I mean, it's a totally new player. And all these allies are anti-Israeli. Even the European Union is anti-Israeli. Ireland, for example. There's a huge anti-Israeli sentiment even among previous allies, and even within the United States. There's a growing anti-Semitic, tainted version of anti-Israelism. So Israel is losing all its alliances, all its support, and people are beginning to question the very fundamental right of Israelis to be there. So they're describing Israel as a colonial enterprise, colonial outpost. And they're asking, what right did Israelis have to take the land of the Palestinians away? Which is a wrong way of presenting. These are not the historical facts, but forget that for a minute. That's a perception. And so the very right to exist of Israel is being questioned, which is the first time, to the best of my knowledge, that it's this way. So people are saying whatever is done to the Israelis is justified because they are usurpers. They are criminals. They are home invaders, you know? When a home invader comes into your home, you shoot him. I mean, what the hell? He's civilian. Most criminals are civilians, you know? But you shoot them. So this is, the dynamic is developing against Israel. And while it can survive another few decades, there's no way Israel can survive in the long term. It's been a failed enterprise. There's another historical argument in favor of what I'm saying. Israel is the seventh state, number 7. The 7th time the Jews have tried to establish themselves on that plot of land. 7th. The previous 6 times ended really horribly. Like you had the Greeks, and then you had the Romans, and then you had the 7 times. And the last time with the Romans, they destroyed everything and they pushed away the vast majority of the population, and that became the diaspora, famous exile of the Jews. And I don't know, if you fail in doing something 6 times, why would I bet on you to do it right the 7th time?
There's a counter argument that says, "Why God, aren't they fantastically persistent?" Doesn't it? The persistence argument, this absolute fundamental determination to get the land of our forefathers. The problem is, and you described it as the neighborhood from hell, right? Essentially, how can you you're talking about it's almost like the myth of Sisyphus. Remember, had to push the rock up the mount forever, and it's this interminable.
And the dynamics of what's happening in Israel today are a replica, clone of the dynamics of the previous 6 states. For example, the emergence of hyper-nationalistic religious zealots. That happened in all previous 7 cases. You can read about it in the New Testament, where Jesus was actually surrounded by a few religious zealots, hyper-nationalistic. They wanted him to become king of the Jews and get rid of the Romans, you know. So we had all these dynamics before, and they keep repeating themselves and replicating themselves. But this time around, the situation looks more dire, in my view. Because in all 6 previous cases, the Jews succeeded to secure an alliance with a major power. So, for example, the Jews allied themselves, Rome against Greece, and so on. And now we have the United States. But the signs are not good. The United States, for example, is becoming isolationist, more isolationist. There are definitely powerful voices in the United States on the right and on the left, not only on the left, who, being anti-Semitic, consider the Jews as the true masters of the United States and resent this. The Jews manipulate the United States somehow and so on. So anti-Semitism is a new thing. There was no anti-Semitism until the diaspora. In Rome, for example, in the empire, there was no anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is an invention of the more or less 18th, 19th century. It's a new thing. It's a powerful force because it's a conspiracy theory. It's the mother of all conspiracy theories. And it's also an anti-immigration movement because the Jews emigrated to these places and anti-Semitism was a reaction to immigration. So anti-Semitism is a postmodern thing, actually. It fits perfectly into the current ethos, into the current, populist worldview.
Zeitgeist,
yeah. So
didn't we not, with the Abraham Accords, get very close to a stabilization?
no. Abraham Accords was with tangential fringe countries. Saudi Arabia, who is the main key player, was not there. Iran, who is the second key player, was not there. Morocco is nice. I'm Moroccan, but it's a cute place. But really, it's not exactly, second to the European Union. And on the other hand, Israel is losing the support of the European Union in a very decisive manner. They're talking about sanctions. They're talking about, that's serious. The European Union imposed sanctions 3 times in its history. There was Serbia, Russia, and now Israel. Russia has China. Russia has North Korea. Russia has allies, powerful allies. India, Narendra Modi is hugging Putin. Russia is not isolated. I think America, United States, is more isolated than Russia, ironically. But Israel doesn't have any of this. Everyone is against Israel. China is against Israel. Russia is against, everyone. Literally everyone. There's nowhere to look. So I'm very pessimistic. I think, but I don't think we've done anything wrong as Israelis. Not in the sense that we haven't committed war crimes. We've committed war crimes. Strategically, when you decide to occupy a piece of land where there are people, where there are inhabitants, you're making a certain choice, which has predictable consequences and outcomes in the long term. Zionism is the belief that the Jews should have a homeland. Zionism is not about the return to Zion. It's a common mistake. Actually, the early Zionists, like Theodor Herzl, the father of Zionism, did not want to go to Palestine. He was looking for other territories. He was offered at the time Madagascar and Argentina and what have you. Stalin established a Jewish homeland. Stalin, of all people, established a Jewish homeland in a place called Birobidzhan. So the early Zionists who were Western Europeans considered Palestine a shithole and absolutely did not want to go there after having lived in Vienna and Paris, you know. It was when the Eastern Zionists, the East European Zionists, Ostjuden Zionists, took over the Zionist movement and deposed of the Western Europeans, only then Palestine emerged as the preferred solution. It was an East European thing. And it created a big schism, a big rift in the Zionist movement in 1903. That's a much neglected history. Hitler himself, the Nazi regime, until at least June 1941, considered the solution to the Jewish problem a Jewish homeland in Europe. Himmler traveled to Poland and came up with a plan known as the Lublin Plan to allocate a portion of Poland to the Jews, because there were so many Jews there anyhow, you know, to allocate a portion of Poland and to declare it an independent state, admittedly as an interim measure, to then transfer all the Jews to Africa. I think his idea was Madagascar, I'm not quite sure, someplace in Africa. So the Nazis themselves toyed with the idea of a homeland. It's just when they've invaded Russia and suddenly found themselves with another 3 million Jews that they said enough is enough. There's no solution to this, and we need to exterminate them. And then in the Wannsee conference, they came up with the Endlösung, the Judenfrage,
Final solution, yeah.
Final solution. So even the Nazis considered a homeland as a solution. Long time. That was the official policy for a long time. Actually, the Nazis collaborated with Jews who wanted to emigrate to Palestine. They worked together with the Zionists to facilitate emigration to Palestine. They wanted to get rid of the Jews in Europe. Extermination was an afterthought, a second, like we failed in everything else. I mean, because when Jews started to emigrate to Palestine, the British made a stop to it. I mean, the British halted the migration. And then the Nazis said, bloody hell, no one wants these people. They approached the Americans. Americans said, no way. This will provoke anti-Semitism. No way. No one wanted the Jews. And so the Nazis says, we're not going to get stuck with 10 million Jews. I mean, that'll be the joke of the century. Like, our main platform is to get rid of the Jews, and now we're going to be the largest Jewish denomination in the universe. I mean, no way. So, unfortunately, the only way is to kill them. And at the beginning, there was a lot of resistance and it wasn't a smooth process, as if, Hitler was crazy, he wanted to kill the Jews. No way, that's not true. It's a wrong representation of history. But the truth is, no one wants the Jews. No one has ever wanted the Jews. The Jews were imposed on people by the Romans in the 1st century AD. And ever since then, this created a lot of friction and conflict all over Europe all the time. Pogroms and ghettos, and a million solutions have been tried somehow to isolate them, to integrate them, nothing worked. There was a very long period there was a movement known as the assimilation. So Jews assimilated. They became Germans with a Mosaic faith. Kind of French with a Mosaic faith. It didn't work either because the population resented them. So you're talking about a homeland where everything is divided already, and there is anti-colonialism and anti-Semitism, and both are problematic as far as the Jews are concerned, because whatever territory you give them would be perceived as taking it away from someone, and that's colonialism, and they're hated. One of the major anti-Semitic movements in the world is in bloody China, where last time I counted, there were 100 Jews. And it's a bastion of anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism is a conspiracy theory about who rules the world malevolently. It doesn't necessarily have to do with real Jews. It's the Jew as an idea. The Jew is a symbol. The principle of the Jew. The Jew is an organizing principle. So the protocols of the elders of Zion, this kind of thing. The Jews are behind everything. And they're malevolent. They're not only behind everything, which could be okay, but they're malevolent. So they take advantage, they exploit, they kill, and this theory doesn't have to be substantiated with a real life specimen. So that's why you have anti-Semitism in China. I think with narcissism, something very similar happens. People are talking about narcissists, and very likely they have never come across a narcissist in their lives. The people diagnosed with narcissistic personality disorder constitute anywhere between 1% and 3% of the population. It's closer to 1%, according to most authorities on the topic. It's closer to 1%. That means that very likely you have never come across a narcissist. Well, you have, you're talking to me, but vast majority of people likely have never come across a narcissist. And yet they hate narcissists. They demonize narcissists. It's the same. It's a belief that narcissists are behind malevolent things. They are in control somehow. They're taking over. They are, it's the old blood libel only applied to narcissists. And many people would tell you online that narcissists are demons. And even more, that most narcissists are Jews. I'm kidding you not. Many people say that most narcissists are Jews. So they say, you see, Harvey Weinstein, Jew, Bernie Madoff, Jew, Epstein, Jew, they're all Jews. Maxwell in Britain, Jew, they're all Jews. It's a Jewish plot. Narcissism is a Jewish plot. And it's not fringe. Not fringe. So there's a conflation of the two. But it's all about, I'm helpless. I don't know what to do. I'm disoriented. So this can't be the natural state. It means it's being engineered somehow. Someone is engineering this. Some malicious force is at work. So who is this malicious force? Someone I don't know. Because it's someone I know, they're not malicious. I know them. But it's the Jews. I never met a Jew, but I know it's the Jews because I never met a Jew. And it's a narcissist. I never met a narcissist. But I know it's a narcissist. So it's easier to blame someone you have never had any contact with. And the Jews, small number. It's 15 million.